Hey there everyone, this is Andre the Game Idea Guy, and I want to talk about the transition from 7th gen to 8th gen. Again, this I'm going to be talking about it from a little bit different of an angle, one that should have occurred to me well before now. And the only thing that even made it occur to me was talking about how retailers pretty much forced the retail price of games to be the same for physical and digital, because otherwise they weren't going to be selling the games for the companies. They were not going to sell them if digital games were cheaper than retail. They weren't, because they didn't want digital to have an advantage over physical. So it's one of those things where it's like, now a couple other things makes more sense. And there are probably several people already keyed in on it, like, yeah, Andre, that does make sense. Surprising you just got here. Look, there was a bunch of stuff going on during that time period. I couldn't pay attention to every single little detail. But it did make the idea stand out to me that the push from having your physical media be able to play your games on your console to having to have it install was part of the push from physical to digital. It was probably the biggest push from physical to digital, because essentially it turns your console into a lower budget PC, where the disc is now just the key to unlock the game to be able to play it. Now, you could have done this on Xbox 360 and PS3. You could install games. I think actually for PS3 some games are required at least a partial install. But also on Xbox 360 you could install the game and then use the disc as a key to play it, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to play it. You'd be able to install it and the game data would be there, and all it really does is help with loading times and allow things to load up faster. And for Xbox 360 it really wasn't like a major difference for a lot of people, so there was much bigger of an advantage for physical games than there were for digital at the time. Let's think about it this way. If your physical game reads at about the same speed as a digital copy, you're paying the same price, and for your physical copy you get to keep the game. You always have it, but it's on that disc or that set of discs. So even if it goes off of the online store, you still have it. Or you still have the option to have it, I should say. But that's not the same for digital purchases, as we have seen multiple times over. Because storefronts can get shut down, and they are not required to stay open, because who's to say that they have enough data storage to support 4, 5, and 6 older platforms? They don't. Which is something people have to understand. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a side tangent because of things I keep hearing people say, but they say it with the incorrect context. So I'm trying to wrap up a few things here. But the push to make sure that you played your games and had to install them anyway, which is perpetuated by Microsoft and Sony. Because Nintendo, even now, you can still purchase physical media and play the games off the physical media. You do it the Wii U, 3DS, the Switch, every platform they have ever released, you can still play off physical media. I don't know if that's ever going to change down the line, but they still work within a way that you can still get the full game, the full product on your physical media and play it right off of that media without having to install it. So buying Nintendo physical media makes sense. Buying physical media for the other platforms, though, is almost pointless because there's now no advantage. If anything, let's go back to this. 360 PS3, for the most part, you could put your disc in your console and it would play right then. Like, you didn't have to do any installs or anything unless there was like a day one update, which that did start to become a thing during that generation. But you weren't forced to install it in the console. You put your disc in, it loads everything, you boot it up, and it goes into the game. That's how they work. PS4 and Xbox One changed that. Because they gave you drives that were too slow to read the disc. The drive that's in the Wii U, the disc drive in the Wii U is faster than the disc drives in both the Xbox One and PS4. That's why Wii U can read its games directly off of the media. Now, it was definitely an option for Xbox One and PS4 to be able to do that. It would have made it more expensive though, to have those types of drives to be able to do that. But I think honestly, they went that route on purpose with third parties bending their ear. Or even potentially it could have been something they came up with themselves. But I think it's more than likely that third parties bent their ear on that one, saying that they wanted to have more direct control over the distribution of the games, over who's able to play games. And I think honestly this is mostly in effort to combat piracy. But it also removes your potential physical ownership of a game. Like, this is where I gotta get into that tangent. People say if purchasing is not owning, then pirating is not stealing. In both instances, they're wrong. Purchasing is not owning the game, it's owning a license to the game. It's always been that way. It's always been that way. Your copy of the game is just that. It is a copy of the game. It is not the master version of the game. It's not the version of the game with the source files, because you don't own that. You own your physical representation of the game. The problem is when people talk, and because it's not going to work legally to say, okay, I purchased this game in the store, I now own the game. No, you've never owned the game. You have always owned a copy. You've always owned a read-only version of the game. You don't own the version of the game that is readable and editable. You don't own the copy that can be changed legally. You own the read-only version of the game. Whereas you are not allowed, or not supposed to be allowed, to change the contents of the game because you did not create it and you don't own the copyrights or trademarks to it. You only own the physical copy of the game, or the physical license to the game, or now in this day and age, the digital license to the game. That is what you own. You can't say you own the game, because legally that doesn't work. You can say you own a copy of the playable game. I know it does. Honestly, I understand why this is a major thing and why it becomes an issue. But it just doesn't work that way logistically or legally. That's why they make legal arguments so highly specific. So that's for the first part. For the second part, piracy isn't stealing. You can believe that if you want. But trust me, it's not a good idea to go online and telling people that you pirate a bunch of games. It's not a good idea, because when they do start cracking down, they will look for everyone who's going online and saying, hey, I'm doing this because, hey, it doesn't matter if I purchase it physically or not. If I don't actually own it, you never owned it. You've never owned it. You've only owned the representation that you have purchased of it. And that will be the legal argument that gets made. Those will be the semantics used that will potentially either get you highly fined or put in jail. So it's not a good idea running around telling everybody, oh yeah, I'm pirating all these games. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't own it anyway. Again, you never owned the actual source. You've always owned a derivative product of it. And that will be what is said. That will be how those legal cases will be handled. And for everybody that thinks that they are being highly intelligent, that they are making a 4D chess move, you are putting yourself in the crosshairs of these companies and their legal teams the moment that they decide they're going to go after people. And social media is going to be the first place that they look, because everybody likes to run their mouth and tell everybody everything that they know and about everything that they have. So that's going to be the first thing that they go after is social media, particularly YouTube, TikTok, and stuff that's like it. They're going to go after those platforms first. So if you are telling people that you are pirating games, or that you are taking games that are readily available and up for sale without attempting to purchase them, you are putting yourself in the potential crosshairs. And everybody thinks everything is sweet now. Stop assuming everything's going to work out, because chances are it's not. It's not going to be sweet. Later on down the line, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, where they drop the bad hammer on everybody, it's not going to be sweet. I'm telling you, it's not going to be sweet. And people listening to this, when that stuff starts to happen, will go back and say, oh shit, Andre was right. Andre was right. So don't run around telling people that you are stealing games digitally because you don't own them anyway. It's not a good idea. Not a good look. Setting yourself up for failure. Now, to get back to what I was saying, which was the forced move from being able to read physically to having to install games. Like I said, I think that third parties bent the ear of Microsoft and Sony. Like, you can tell that third parties bent the ear for Microsoft and Sony for a lot of things. That's why Xbox One and PS4 have such similar parts in them. So this wouldn't surprise me as that being the thing. They're like, hey, we can control it more if they have to install the game, because if they have to install the game, that means it has to read to the servers. If it has to read to the servers, then it's still going to have a digital license marker for it anyway, as opposed to it being solely being able to run off of the hardware, which doesn't require it to be tied to an account. Being able to have it solely read physically off the hardware doesn't require it to be tied to an account. Now, there are ways to make it happen either way, as Nintendo has proven with the Switch, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you would be able to transfer said license. Like, for example, Switch cards. If someone purchased a game brand new, physical, put it in their Switch, and they got the Nintendo points off of it, they finished that game, erased the data from it, sell it off to someone else. That person cannot then purchase said game, plug it into their Switch, and then get those same points off of it. That's a form of DRM. It's one of the lighter forms of DRM, but it is a form of DRM. And a lot of people probably wouldn't understand that anyway, but that's why I just explained it. So what essentially happened with Xbox One and PS4 was that now you have to log on to the servers and install the game anyway. Yeah, some games were small enough to be installed right off the disc, but a lot of games are too big. Even for Xbox One and PS4. A lot of games are too big to be installed off of the Blu-ray disc. To be fully installed anyway. And Jay says it often enough, like, those servers go down. It don't matter if you got a physical copy or not. If your game is not still installed on your hardware, it won't make jack squat of a difference if those servers go down. If you have no other way to access it. So, that is a thing to worry about. But looking at it this way, third parties didn't want to have to pay retailers the type of money that they had to pay them, especially when they have to pay the platform holders for putting their games on the platforms, or they're supposed to be paying the platform holders. Don't quite always work out that way. But if brick and mortar stores are forcing prices to be the same on digital and physical without like a sale happening specifically somewhere, at least during 7th generation, then that means the digital version still has no value in comparison to the physical. What do you think about it? I'm pretty sure, did I ever explain? Just in case I didn't, because I had that little tangent in the middle there. Just in case I didn't, during 7th generation for Xbox and Sony, or Microsoft and Sony, physical media was still playable. You could play your physical media directly on the platform. It didn't take up space on your hard drive. And honestly, the load time differential wasn't that big. It wasn't big enough to justify having to install. Now, after the changeover to the 8th generation, you flip things. Because they were the same price before, now the same price again. So now it makes more sense to just purchase digitally because you're going to have to install it anyway. And honestly, you get to installing faster. You can purchase your game no matter where you are and it can still install on your hardware at home. And on top of that, you don't have to worry about changing out the physical disc now. Unless you absolutely want to have a physical version of the game that will potentially just be a coaster in the long run. And on top of that, again, file sizes for games are much larger than the Blu-ray media that people are purchasing to install the games from. So unless every game is highly compressed on those Blu-ray discs, which I highly doubt, there is no way the whole game is on those discs. And the only company that we know of that really works on compressing the hell out their games is Nintendo and their partners. Or their teams. which is why their file sizes are still so small in comparison to everything else. So it's something to be worried about, or to look at. And pretty much every Switch cart can play directly on the Switch without any sort of day one update. So if you live in an area where a game got a day one update, but you had the physical copy of the game on your Switch, you can still play it. And that type of thing takes the control away from the third party. But you're still able to transfer your license at that point. And that's one thing that they're worried about, is not being in control of how people use the licenses that they're given. Because honestly, if we were to put it that way, game companies don't want people reselling the licenses of the games to other people, because that potentially ruins their ability to have more money. But with all the other stuff that they're doing, they're going to be hemorrhaging money anyway, so it's kind of a lose-lose situation. But yeah, I don't want to drag this on too much more. There are definitely more things that could be said on this subject, but right now I kind of want to drop it and then deal with potentially saying anything in the comments or talking to people on different platforms as the discussion crops up to them. So, thank you everyone for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me, and until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out, everybody. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. If you would be interested in supporting my efforts in content creation, please head on over to Amazon and look up The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search, and you will find both Volume 1 and Volume 2 up for sale. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to be able to create more content for you in the future. Peace out.